Hi, my name is Tom and I'm an alcoholic. In November 2020, I was asked to lead an Alcoholics Anonymous men's STEP discussion meeting. The format of the meeting is for the leader to share their experience with one step in depth per week using the 12 and 12 book as a guide. I recorded my portion of the meeting to share with sponsees and others who could not attend the meeting. Thanks for taking the time to listen, and I hope that my message of recovery resonates with you. I'm Tom. I'm an alcoholic. Thanks for asking me to do this once again. Tonight we're on step 5. So let me do a quick intro. I'm Tom. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic and I'm an addict and a codependent and an Al-Anon. And I've got a lot of isms all related to alcoholism and other character defects. I'm call myself an alcoholic because I found the solution in Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps here. In the spiritual solution, I've been to plenty of other 12-step fellowships, but this is where I've called home for quite a while now. I drank and drugged from the age of 10 to 18. I've been sober coming up on 32 years here in February. And I, find that this process of sharing with others the solutions I found in AA is the one of the main callings I've found in my recovery and in my life. That I've got something to give. It was kind of part of my suffering as a result of what I went through, and if it means turning this thing around and having something to offer, I'm doing full steam ahead on this thing, and part of that was step 5, and really overcoming the hurdle of self and isolation, which I'll get to in a minute. So first, the synopsis in the beginning of the book of the 12 and 12. Step 5: admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 12 steps deflate ego. Step 5 is difficult but necessary to sobriety and peace of mind. Confession is an ancient discipline. Without fearless admission of defects, few could stay sober. What do we receive from step 5? Beginnings of true kinship with man and God. Lose sense of isolation. Receive forgiveness and give it. Learn humility. Gain honesty and realism about ourselves. Necessity for complete honesty. Danger of rationalization. How to choose the right person in whom to confide. Results are tranquility and consciousness of God. Oneness with God and man prepares us for the following steps. Lots of topics there around step 5. I'll touch on a few of them in my experience here. So I always go back, why step 5? Why in the world would I want to admit to God, to myself, and to another human being the exact nature of my wrongs? Well, first I came to terms and admitted that I was alcoholic, that I was powerless over alcohol and my addiction and other facets of my life. That I was unmanageable in many areas of my life. In particular, that first step decision of was I going to pick up the next drink. I found out in 2 that I could be restored to sanity. I came to believe that I could be restored to sanity, not pick up that first drink. And that there was a source of power that I could tap into after I learned I was powerless. And 1, this program provides that source of power, a connection with a power greater than myself, a higher power, gave me that answer. And in step 3, I made a decision and actually started taking action on that decision. So I turned my will and my life over to the care of that power. And what did I do with that? Well, I squandered it personally for a number of years, and until I finally made that decision to work on and complete a 4th step. So once I had done the 4th step, why would I do a 5th? Well, for some of us, we sat on a 4th step, whether it was for weeks or months or years. We had been sitting on the conditions that caused us to become alcoholic, to have these resentments, fears, and harms, our secrets build up. And for me, they built up because I didn't have the release of getting drunk or high anymore to run from them. So they built and built until I decided to finally get them down on pen and paper. And once I got them down on pen and paper, I needed to decide what I was going to do with them and who I was going to share them with. I finally gotten the courage, put pen to paper, and for that time period that I was doing this work, I was more in danger, I think, of tipping over. And I don't know if that meant drinking or what, but I just knew that everything was at the top at this point. Everything had come to the surface that I was able to deal with in that moment, at that stage of my sobriety, which put me at a certain amount of risk. I needed to do something with this inventory. I needed to take the next step, the next action. So I always talk about risks, So in the big book on 72 and 73, it talks about the risk of not doing a fifth step. Let's see, if we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. Well, yeah, it always comes back to drinking for me. Avoiding this humbling experience, we may have tried easier methods, and maybe had only done a shallow effort at this. And I know I talked about shallow last time, but depending on how deep I go into this and how serious I take it, my risk changes. On page 73, Bill talks about they thought they had lost their egoism and fear. They thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we all find necessary until they told someone else all their life story. So how deep I go indicates how much freedom I will get out of this. What I'm capable of doing in my first, fourth, and fifth step, and what I'm capable of doing in subsequent fourth and fifth steps varies wildly. And the deeper I go in this process, the more freedom I achieve. First time around, do your best. I'm not the judge of what someone's best effort is. You'll know in your heart. On page 56 in the 12 and 12, it also gives us another risk of not doing the fifth step. They often try to carry the load alone. How much they suffered of irritability, anxiety, remorse, and depression, and how unconsciously seeking relief they would sometimes accuse even their best friends of the very character defects themselves were trying to conceal. So, there's a certain amount of consequence of holding off on the fifth step, whether it's 4 and 5 or just 5 on its own after I come to a certain point. So, I'm looking for the promises on the other side of the fifth step. The promises on the other side of the fifth step, again, on page 55, it talks about long-time sobriety and peace of mind. In the big book, I think it is, we're on page 75. These are some huge promises, I didn't go into this looking for the promises. I just know they came afterwards, but there's fifth step promises in here. And it talks about we can be alone at perfect peace and ease. We can look the world in the eye. We have a spiritual experience. That feeling that the drink problem has disappeared. So, there's some huge benefits to doing this fifth step. And I'll talk about the biggest one in a few minutes when I talk about the isolation part. But when I first started looking at this, again, I look at the wording and some of the readings, and again, I'm hit with admitted. I thought I only had to make one admission, and that was my first step admission that I was powerless of alcohol. But now I'm here. You got me back at admitting stuff again, the exact nature of my wrongs. I'm an alcoholic. I am a liar and a rationalizer, and I don't do good with admitting. I don't do good with both the honest part of it and also the telling anyone else about it. But here I am, with another admission step. But this time it's about my character defects. That I need to admit these character defects and these this history about myself, these secrets I've been keeping, in order to get free of them. And I didn't know that that this was going to be as satisfying as it turned out to be. That the process of, admission comes relief. I thought admission meant defeat. I thought admission meant guilt and taking on the punishment that came with admissions. So, in a way, that this admission is yet another, freeing step for me. There's a reading that I picked up somewhere along the line that talks about being emptied so we could be refilled. So step one, I admit my powerlessness. That's an emptying step, and I lose my power or perceived power, and two fills me back up with a power. So likewise, 4 and 5 is an emptying step. I'm trying to admit these character defects so I could start to be filled with something more positive and better. So who am I admitting these things to, and why would I want to these these particular entities? So I'll talk about God first. I stumbled with this one as well. When I did the theoretical steps, I looked at them and like, yeah, those are good in theory. Why would I need to admit anything to God? I thought God knew everything. Why would I need to, bring him into this process and specifically go back over stuff with a higher power? Doesn't he already know what I'm done? Doesn't he know how remorseful I am? That, kind of burning sense of, how much I've harmed others and how much it haunts me. Why would I need to do that? So I didn't get that, and, I think it was part of it was, again, go back to step 2 and this relationship with a higher power, and then, kind of iterative work through the steps is, I had a largely a mistaken understanding of a role of a higher power in my life, and that it was about judgment, right? It was about needing to behave in a certain way in order to get love, absolution, whatever it might be. I thought a God relationship was transactional and conditional, like all the other relationships in my life were. I didn't realize that that the relationship with a higher power is unconditional, and that it's loving in a way that I don't need to hold back, because there's no punitive part of a relationship with a higher power. So I don't need to hide. I don't need to. I don't need to hold back with a higher power. But I do need to connect with a higher power. And there's a difference for me between saying, "Yeah, God knows what I'm doing. It's cool. I don't need to admit anything to God." To consciously connect with a higher power and bring it into that conversation, whether it's when I'm actually doing my 5th step, or whether it's I'm sitting separately in meditation with a higher power and going through my 4th step and reviewing these defects of character and these harms. It's inviting God into this process. It's making space for that power, that experience, that connection to happen, which makes it a deeper experience. And there's a lot of words there that I just can't evoke to bring that into description for you guys, other than to say, if you've done it, you know it. I can, try and, have a conversation with you on the side to talk for an hour about just the presence of a higher power, and how that feels. Human language has a lot to be desired when it comes to these larger spiritual concepts. And other than to say, it's a deeper experience when I connect. And so I understand now I understand about bringing that connection into the fifth step process. So I got that covered finally. Admit to to ourselves, myself. I'm admitting to myself these exact nature of my wrongs, and sharing this fourth step. Well, I was there. I knew what I did. Like, why would I need to do this all over again and admit to myself? Well, I am certainly one of the most delusional alcoholics out there. I can justify, any type of behavior and any type of harms I had caused previously, in order to make me feel better. So I need to start to look at myself honestly. I need to drop the deception. Just because, just like my relationship with my higher power, I thought was transactional and conditional. So is my relationship with myself. That, when I start to get honest and actually, admit to these things, it gives me freedom. I thought I was protecting myself from myself. I thought I was, the deception and the justification and rationalization was a protective piece. But the truth was, all it was building up the mound of crap that was causing me that restless, irritable, and discontent feeling. That if I'm honest with myself, if I'm transparent and about my character defects and about the things I've been lying to myself about, and put this stuff on paper, I start to again gain freedom because now at least I know where I need to do the work. And again, once I start to understand that, my fourth step, fifth step takes a deeper dimension. So here comes the scary part. I need to admit to another human being. When I was skirting a fourth and fifth step, I would say, well, I go to therapy. That's another human being. I'm admitting all kinds of stuff to her. She gets a check at the end of the session, and I don't have to worry about her, rejecting me. But that didn't bring any deep emotional connection with anyone. That didn't resolve that disconnection that I felt with the people in Alcoholics Anonymous specifically, but the world at large. I I also need another human being to help me with the honesty part, right? I had a friend in NA early on, and one of his favorite phrases was, "You can't dope fiend a dope fiend," right? Or you can't BS a BSer, whatever variation you want to put on it. And the role of both the receiver of the fifth step, whether I'm telling somebody or receiving the fifth step, is I'm trying to kind of weed through all of the deception, all of the rationalization, all the softening of the harms done. Well, it wasn't so bad. I need that third party to help me pick through that and see where I'm trying to get over. Right. Again, I'm trying to protect myself. Who wants to be rigorously honest, right? Only someone who, like myself, who's in danger of drinking and drugging again. Only someone who's felt that spiritual connection that comes as a result of doing this work, who wants more of it, right? And my ego will push back on me. My disease will start to reemerge and start to justify my character defects. When I put the light on them, they scurry into the corner, into the dark, and they will push back at me when I'm not paying attention, and they will nibble away at my peace and serenity and make me irritable again. So I need to continually shine the light on this inventory, and I need that other person to shine the light also. Also, I've I've been at this a long time, so I generally know my patterns. But until I get a fresh look at my character defects and my behavior and my story, I might be missing something. I've my last fifth step, which was a few months ago, I took it to three different people. I took it to my sponsor and two very good friends in separate sessions to get their perspective on my fourth step inventory. Because again, I might be missing something that, if I can, reveal one more pattern of selfishness or self-centeredness, one more instance of, self-delusion, then that gives me just that more much opportunity to recover from this thing and have a better understanding of self and not falling into the same traps over and over again. So when I did my first fit step, my sponsor nodded his head, and I think that that was probably the biggest relief I had ever experienced. I had held on to stuff for so long. I had thought I was unique. I thought I thought stuff that I had gone through was so you know secretive and so damaging that I was afraid to share it with anybody. And to have that person basically do do the spiritual act of saying, I know, I've been there, I've done these things, I've felt this way. It's okay, you're not alone. Is, except for the 12th step, you know, process of bringing somebody into the program and 12 stepping somebody, I think the fifth step process is probably the most, you know, you know, spiritually meaningful, deeply connected process that anyone could offer. And that's why when I do fifth steps and listen to fifth steps, I find it as the probably one of the most humbling, honoring role that I can offer in Alcoholics Anonymous. That I can be there for that person when they take that risk and listen to them and acknowledge what they have gone through and perhaps offer that comforting nod of the head that I understand them. So once I do my fifth step process, there might be stuff that I leave out, something I'm not quite ready to share, especially first time around. That's usual. I think, I had one or two things that, again, I need to take to a third party before I was able to then share it openly with others. Once I got, once I kind of got over that hurdle, I was able to share it in my next fourth step or my next time I shared my story with somebody. There's always the question I ask at the end of hearing a fifth step: is that it? Is there anything else? And I think that's also why we're asked to go at the end of the fifth step and meditate on it for an hour on our own to see what else comes up, right? I know for me that happened, and in days afterwards, you'd be like, oh, I forgot that. It was almost again, I'll use the word freeing. That like once that door got opened and I experienced that relief, that these things kind of bubbled back up and they weren't as scary anymore. And I wasn't so frightened to share about them anymore. And it became normalized for someone who was, frightened and secretive and isolated, to have that experience of being okay with sharing about myself. It was transformative. And so like what happens as a result, there's this level of humility that comes out at the other side, right? So, when I share the exact nature of my wrongs, it in the book, I'll find the page here in a second, it leads to humility. Because again, now I've got a good picture of myself. I could take into the rest of the steps. On page 58, it says, it amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. All right, and that which leads us to 6 and 7. I get to shed some of that false story, that, that false self that I built up over the years. Part of my fourth step resentments, my fourth step behavior, my character defects were built up around this like story that you would drink too if you had my upbringing, or these old resentments that I didn't know the true meaning behind. My false self, my story that I've been telling myself begins to fade away, and my true self starts to become revealed, or at least it's somewhere out in the horizon that I could see, right? That a sincere attempt to become what we could be. I start to believe in this spiritual awakening that you guys are talking about, like practice these principles in all my affairs. I couldn't even like conceive of that stuff initially, but if I'm able to drop some of these resentments and fears on in my fifth step and start to look at, what these spiritual principles are, and I think I could actually practice these, right? It starts to become, potential instead of, anchor, right? That my fourth step story and my character defects were before that. The other piece of the result of the fifth step, and this is on page 58, bottom of 57, top of 58, we began to get to the feeling that we could be forgiven no matter what we had thought or done. Often it was while working on this step with our sponsors or spiritual advisors that we felt truly able to forgive others, no matter how deeply we felt they had wronged us. Our moral inventory had persuaded us that all-around forgiveness was desirable, but it was only when we resolutely tackled step 5 that we inwardly knew we were able to receive forgiveness and give it to. Again, for someone who held resentments and a scorecard against the rest of the world, that was a big step for me also. That these things, while I'll throw in air quotes bad, they were part of my instincts, gone astray. They were part of some conditioning that happened to me. I now had received some power in my life through the program to start to change these behaviors and look at them and get honest with them. And so I could begin to be forgiven for these, events, these actions, these resentments, these, let go of these fears. And by the process of the steps and the columns, look at the other people's side of this, this resentment, harm done, whatever it might be, and I can go, I guess I can forgive them, right? And so this process of being forgiven and offer forgiveness really just blows open the doors, and again, if I'm less concerned about keeping a scorecard, making my relationships transactional, keeping God out of them. If I'm setting that all aside and starting to realize that I could be forgiven and forgive, that that a spiritual experience exists in every relationship that I have, that this is a long-term process of living in the spirit of the program. My relationships get so much better, and I start to feel that connectedness, and I start to realize, what this, weird spiritual stuff that you guys were all talking about. I start to have this spiritual experience. I start to have those relationships that are meaningful and deep and personal. I start to be of service to others. This is just, all the results that start to happen to me as this stuff opens up, and I start to have belief in this process. So I wanted to finish up with a fifth step example. I had mentioned I had done a fourth step earlier this year, I had three resentments on there. And I'll share really quick this resentment process, just because talking about the fifth step, let me do a quick fifth step with you guys. So my resentment is with my wife. The cause was I was angry because she wouldn't quit her job. And the backstory of that is she doesn't like her job. She gets upset about her job. Sometimes she gets really anxious about her job. She gets angry at her job, makes me miserable about her job. It causes tension in the home. There's sadness, whatever it might be, disruption. So I experienced that. That's my part of self that was hurt or threatened. Was, well, it's my emotional security. She gets upset, I got upset. My personal relationships, she's upset. Interferes with our emotional, sexual relationships. It could hurt pocketbook, if she does quit her job. I told her she could because, it's making her unhappy, but over and over again, she chose not to. And I couldn't understand that until I do the next couple columns, right? So why, where was I to blame? Well, she's in the wrong here. She just won't quit her job. She won't listen to me. Why, I have nothing, there's no blame to go around here. It's her that's causing this disruption. Well, I'm being selfish. It's interfering with my life. I'm frightened because when she gets that upset and anxious, it could lead to emotional problems for her. So I'm worried that this is going to actually cause like some severe emotional problems. Whereas I inconsiderate. Well, yeah, you know what? I'm worried about me. I'm worried about her, but I'm really worried about me. So that's where all that stuff comes up, and I start to like, oh, it's my selfishness, self-centeredness again. 31 years later. Selfishness, self-centeredness, raising its ugly head, making it difficult for me to be in this, in this situation with my wife. And what could I do better, right? I always look, how could I do that better? Well, I can understand it's her choice. It's not mine. I am powerless over my wife, right? I can give her compassion and love and support her when she goes through these things and accept the things I cannot change, which is she will leave her job when she is ready to leave her job, no matter how much I beg or shout or scream or bribe her to try and leave her job. And that admission in those, and seeing the other side, I can go, oh, okay. So I've got to make an amends. I've got to accept the things I cannot change. And I've got to pray on it and turn that around to something positive and that I could work on in 6 and 7. So that process doesn't take 2 minutes. That process takes longer in real time, but that's essentially a fourth, fifth step turnaround in the program and how I just practiced one. So once again, I want to thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you again, Pete, for asking me to do this. Hopefully I shed some light on my fifth step experience, and looking forward to hearing from some of you guys. Thanks.